The Phillies have tendered contracts to multiple arbitration-eligible players. I'll tell you what that means and why it's not necessarily a guarantee that those players are Phillies in the 2026 season on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we are now the #1 sports podcast network. Locked On Phillies, your #1 place for daily, Monday through Friday, Philadelphia Phillies content. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. If you're not familiar with some of my work, I've been the host of Locked On Phillies for the past 4 years, a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 6th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. And the Phils made some roster moves today. They tendered some agreements with arbitration-eligible players. They gave some actual contracts out to a couple of other players, both catchers that spent time on the Major League roster this year, not named JT Realmuto, and they let a couple of guys walk. So we'll talk about that and what tendering a contract means and why it's not a guarantee that those players will be on the roster for 2026. Just an explanation of the different points of Major League Baseball's offseason, because frankly, Major League Baseball has the most complicated offseason of any of the 4 major North American sports. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on. We'll explain it to you. Also, we'll get our responses, the answers to our off the poll question and where people stood on Kyle Schwarber or alternative option. I was surprised with how that went down. I'll read you the results later on in the episode. And the Phillies just did a great charity event last night. We're going to talk about it, why they did such a great job, and something that's underrated about being a Philadelphia Phillies fan. And for me personally, being able to work alongside the organization. So a lot of great stuff in today's episode, but let's start with the news of the day, because there were tendered contracts all around baseball today. It was the date where you had to tender contracts to arbitration-eligible players. So let's first start with what tendering a contract means. So if you're arbitration-eligible, that means you are not yet at the service time requirement to be a free agent, which means the team has control over your contract. And if you're not ready for free agency, if you haven't served the 6 years and change of MLB service time, well, then you end up dealing with arbitration, which is where you try and agree on a contract with the team. And if it doesn't work, you go to an independent arbiter. Basically, you go to court and you argue through it. But what this is just the agreement that you will work on a contract. That's what tendering means in Major League Baseball off-season speak. So basically, for the players that the Phillies tendered an agreement with, that means they're going to sign a contract of some sort before the season starts. You don't have to do this. So the Phillies did allow 2 folks to walk. They went and let Daniel Roberts and Michael Mercado. Both were guys that did not have contracts tendered. So those guys are no longer members of the Philadelphia Phillies, and they can find their next team. You're not required to tender a contract to an arbitration-eligible player, but the Phillies chose to do so with a couple of guys. Alec Bohm, Edmundo Sosa, Bryson Stott. I mean, you can get the idea of the names that are going to be involved there. Basically, all of the players that you know on the Major League roster that were eligible for arbitration had contracts tendered. The full list: Bohm, Sosa, Stott, Marsh, Joan Duran, gotta say his name right, Tanner Banks, and Jesus Luzardo all had contracts tendered. So they're going to agree at some point, whether it's before arbitration, whether they actually go to arbitration. Those guys are going to be under contract with the Philadelphia Phillies before the 2026 season. They also made a couple interesting moves at catcher. They agreed to terms on contracts with Rafael Marchan and Garrett Stubbs, which means they're already set. Tendering a contract is basically like we'll get you before the season, right? Don't worry about it. We'll work something out. Agreeing to contracts is, here's the numbers, here's the money, here's the years, let's go. And they're both one-year deals for Marchan and Stubbs, but already in agreement is a good sign, especially considering the uncertain future of whether or not JT Realmuto will be back. Now, I saw a lot of people see the names like Alec Bohm and Brandon Marsh and Bryson Stott and guys that you think maybe the Phillies could move on from this offseason to switch things up and be upset that the Phillies tendered contracts with those players. Slow down, because tendering a contract does not mean they're guaranteed to play for the Philadelphia Phillies in 2026. You can still move those players. You can absolutely trade them the same way as before when you didn't have that contract tendered. Now, if you did not tender a contract, well, then you would no longer have team control of those players and you would not be able to trade them. So this is actually the good thing for folks that want to see those players moved. You don't want to just let them walk for nothing. I understand if you want Alec Bohm to have more power in the 2026 season than what he showed. If you want to see Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh be able to hit left-handed pitching better, great. We all want improvements for these players. But not tendering a contract to arbitration-eligible players that started on your major league roster would be stupid. Like, there's no world where the Philadelphia Phillies were going to do that. It's just keeping these guys on the team for the time being till you work out a contract. And in the meantime, you can work out potential trade packages, including those players. So it's all good. It's not a huge point of news. There were no major surprises for the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't think anyone was expecting Michael Mercado or Daniel Robert to be parts of this bullpen going forward. They were both kind of up and down throughout this past season when it came to the majors and the minors, not really mainstays in the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. So you were at a point where there was no point to really tender them a major league contract, even though they're arbitration eligible. You just move on and you find new arms for the bullpen. And it's tough for them, but that's the nature of the business. So this was just the step to tie up all the loose ends of like, okay, these are the guys that we're going to keep on our team that are under team control, that are pre-free agency eligible. And that's all that it is. I know there's a lot of weird terms in the Major League Baseball offseason. What's arbitration? What does tendering contracts mean? What are these agreements good for? Can you still trade the players? Free agency questions on big dates. Like, we're going to cover all of this on the podcast as we get closer to it. And anyone that's taking big takeaways from the Phillies tendering these agreements with these players, you're just overreacting to something that really doesn't mean that much. And the contracts for Stubbs and Marchan, I wouldn't look into that too much. You might see that and say, two catchers signed to deals for 2026. Is that going to be the replacement for JT Realmuto, the Marchan-Stubbs duo? No. No, it's not. It may be surprising to some that Garrett Stubbs got another contract with his team, but it could be that he just ends up at AAA again. Like, that's totally possible for him. And he was a big help to the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs this past year when it came to, developing these guys, a guy that's caught great pitchers at the major league level, a good clubhouse guy. He may be like a quasi-player coach for the AAA team when everything's all said and done. And that's not invaluable. But you just want to lock down those guys when your starting catcher that you want back is out there in free agency, so that if the worst case scenario happens, you have two catchers with major league experience that are already signed to contracts. So the absolute DEFCON 1 nuclear fallout situation for the Phillies where JT doesn't resign and they can't bring in anybody else who's starting caliber, you have those two guys. It's not good, but it is a safety net that the Phillies have taken care of. And we'll keep an eye on the other players in there, what goes on ahead of arbitration. You can agree to a contract before arbitration and avoid having to go sit in front of an arbiter and argue each side of the case of how much you should be paid. The hope is that all these players come to an agreement, but arbitration is sometimes necessary, and the Phillies have done it the past couple of years with multiple players. So we'll see. We will keep you updated on their statuses, but don't take this as Alec Bohm's guaranteed to be the third baseman of the Phillies. Brandon Marsh is guaranteed to be a corner outfielder for the Phillies. Bryson Stott is guaranteed to be the second baseman of the Phillies. Now, I'll guarantee you Edmundo Sosa is going to be their top utility guy. I'll guarantee you Joan Duran's going to be the closer. I guarantee you Tanner Banks is going to throw out of the bullpen, and Jesus Luzardo is going to be in the starting rotation. So some of those you can say for sure they're going to be on the team. But it's not a guarantee by any letter of the law. And that's just the one thing that I wanted to explain to people, because I saw a lot of comments when the Phillies tweeted that news out. How are you bringing this guy back? How are you bringing that guy back? Dave Dombrowski's not changing anything. That is not at all what this means. So we good on that? Capiche? All right, great. Now, Kyle Schwarber is already a free agent. You're going to have to beat other teams out if you want to re-sign him. But maybe the fan base doesn't want to re-sign Kyle Schwarber as much as they want some other options. We asked our poll question for our Off the Poll segment, and we're going to get into that coming up next. Is it Kyle Schwarber or these other alternative options? I was somewhat surprised by how Phillies fans answered this, and there's a little theme when we ask you guys poll questions that I'm seeing this offseason that I want to talk about as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about game time first, though, because the NFL season is, we're getting into the thick of it. Big time games all over the place. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time's fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. A couple of weeks ago, one of my good friends said, hey, I'm going down to visit some family in Dallas, and it just so happens the Eagles are playing the Cowboys that week. And I said, you know what you got to do? You got to get tickets through Game Time. I even gave him the promo code, which I'll tell you about in a second. It's Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. But he used that. He got some money off. He's going to be going to Eagles-Cowboys down in Jerry World in Dallas on Sunday. Game Time works everywhere, not just here in Philadelphia. It's great. It's easy. You see everything up front, including the view from your seat, so you know exactly what you're buying and exactly how much it's going to cost. So that's why you got to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, like I was telling you, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, and download Game Time today. Let's talk a little off the poll. Now, normally we do this in our final segment of episodes on Fridays, but there was a very special event that the Phillies did last night that I have to talk about because some things are bigger than sports. Some things are more important than just baseball. And I know that might sound crazy coming from someone whose living is based on a baseball podcast, but obviously there's more to life than sports. So we'll talk about that. But I want to get into this poll question that we had yesterday that had some really intriguing numbers come back. Simple poll question. Which of these off-season scenarios would you prefer? There's no based on money, based on contract length, based on realism of like how realistic it is. I'm putting all of these options on the table. You could pick of one of the three. Option one would be re-sign Kyle Schwarber. Option two would be Kyle Schwarber walks, sign Cody Bellinger. Option three would be Kyle Schwarber walks, trade for Byron Buxton. There are some intriguing options because a lot of people have talked about the flexibility or the inflexibility of the Phillies DH spot. You can't play Kyle Schwarber anywhere in the field. You just can't. He's not a good defender. I love you, Kyle, but he would tell you that too. You can't catch a fly ball without falling down. It is what it is. At this point, he is a DH for the rest of his career and a damn good one. So there's no shame in that. But when he DHs, he's too good to sit. He's healthy. So you're not going to just sit him randomly. He doesn't need rest because he's just hitting. And what that means is he's in that spot in the lineup every single day. And for some teams, the DH spot is a weapon for variability in the lineup. Let's say Bryce Harper his ankle's bothering him or something. I don't know. His legs bother him. He's a little sore, and he just wants to hit for a day. If he was playing for, I don't know, the Kansas City Royals, well, I guess Salvador Perez DH. Anyway, if he was playing for a team without a every single day DH or a guy that you can move into the field if you need to, you could DH him that day or a couple of days and get him that time off so that there's more time with Harper in the lineup and less time with him in the field to balance out the workload. Makes sense, right? But with Kyle Schwarber, you can't do that. So some people have thought, can the Phillies actually create more depth in their lineup if they didn't have Kyle Schwarber in the designated hitter spot? It's not production-based. It's consistently keeping your best players on the field in the lineup. That's what it's all about. So that's part of where the thought process came from for this question. And if you let Schwarber walk, obviously it would be devastating to a lot of fans, myself included. I love the guy, and I think it's very important that they bring him back. But you create some very intriguing opportunities if he is not on the payroll and if he is not in the DH spot. So again, the options were re-sign Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber walks, you sign Cody Bellinger. Kyle Schwarber walks, you trade for Byron Buxton. And the leader with 57% of the vote was re-sign Kyle Schwarber. And you know what? We talked about priority free agents previously, and Kyle Schwarber was number one for that as well. So there is this loud minority, it seems, in the fan base. This is something important to remember. A loud minority that is like, well, he didn't hit in the postseason. The Phillies didn't win. Get rid of everybody. Let him walk. It's too much money. He's getting old. You can't re-sign him. You're already an old team. He doesn't get whatever he wants. He doesn't get to hold the Philadelphia Phillies ransom. And when I hear those opinions expressed on social media, my thought is, okay, maybe the majority of the fan base does not just blindly want Kyle Schwarber back on this team. But when I do these poll questions, Kyle Schwarber is the priority for the fan base. He is the more attractive option than switching things up. And this is a fan base that is largely in favor of changing a bunch of stuff with the Phillies. But Kyle Schwarber is not it. This is not according to me. This is according to what listeners are saying. So I agree with the sentiment that re-signing Kyle Schwarber is probably the best option for the Phillies just from a production standpoint. But with other options that I think could be viable, to see 57% of responders say that Kyle Schwarber is the guy that they want back on this team over signing Cody Bellinger, who can play multiple positions, over trading for Byron Buxton, who when he's healthy could be one of the best outfielders in baseball. The people want Schwarber. Phillies, give them Schwarber. Now, the secondary option, the runner-up, with only 26% of the vote, was Kyle Schwarber walks, sign Cody Bellinger. And that, I guess, makes sense to me. I think people are a little bit wary of the trade question with Byron Buxton. How much is he going to cost? Are you going to move other prospects? Because if you were to move in Andrew Painter, Aiden Miller, or Justin Crawford, that then restricts your next generation safety net for these older players on longer contracts. So trading for Buxton when you let Schwarber walk was only 17% of responders voting for that one as the best option. So clearly you're looking at free agency as being the main way to reshape this team, at least according to this poll. And Bellinger being the more attractive option, probably because he's healthier and he has a little bit more pop than Byron Buxton, even though Buxton does have pop. Trust me, I watched in person when he went yard at Citizens Bank Park in that final series of the regular season. Dude can swing it. He's an athlete. He's got power. He's got speed. He can hit for average. He can field. He can throw. He's a five-tool player. But Cody Bellinger, you could argue, is as well. Kyle Schwarber is not. But the couple of tools he has might be the best in baseball at those tools. So it's a tough question. My biggest takeaway is not that, like, okay, you like Bellinger more than Buxton. It's that you like Schwarber so much more than any other option we put in a poll yet this offseason. That just shows you that anybody who's peddling the narrative that the Phillies can't re-sign Kyle Schwarber, they shouldn't, it would be bad for the fan base, you're not in the majority. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying it seems like Phillies fans would be heavily disappointed if Schwarber does not come back, even after the postseason disappointment of that Dodgers series. And the one thing that I will throw out there on Kyle Schwarber in the postseason, it's more of a look at the numbers versus watch the series, right? If you watch the series, you know that Kyle Schwarber did not have the impact on that series with the Dodgers as you would expect for a guy who was runner-up in MVP voting. He was invisible for 3 of the 4 games. But in that other game, he did hit a ball out of the stadium and another home run and really jump-started that offense. So for all the folks that are like, oh, didn't do anything in the postseason, he had 2 home runs in 4 games in a series. I know they were both in the same game, but they led to a Phillies win. Like, don't let that be overshadowed. And watching the series, that's not going to be your main takeaway. But the further away we get from it, the more I start to think maybe it's on somebody else besides Kyle Schwarber. And those somebody else's being Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, the bullpen, Rob Thompson. I don't know. It's hard to get mad at a guy that went yard twice in a 4-game series. Just throwing it out there. So I want Kyle Schwarber back. I agree with the folks that is the number one option there. But I'm also a little bit surprised that it had 57% of the vote and not more people are interested in the alternative options. But the fan base has spoken, so Kyle Schwarber it is. I'll send the message over to Dave Dombrowski and we'll have him signed by end of the weekend. Nah, that's not how it works. There's still going to be a lot of time for us to talk about the potential contract and what his future would be and to sweat things out if you really want him back, because it will not be a comfortable experience with many people going after Kyle Schwarber, or I should say many franchises going after Kyle Schwarber this offseason. Coming up next, there is something about the Phillies organization, though, that I don't think any fan could debate. And it goes a little bit by the wayside, especially in the season. But they deserve credit for this, and it is not something that we should take for granted. I'll tell you what that is and about an awesome event the Phillies had as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NBA is rolling right along. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It was pretty evident in the middle of last night's Sixers game that Tyrese Maxey was going nuts. He finished with 54 points. You could have taken the live line on his over on points and maybe taken the Sixers to win. Both of those things happened. That's the beautiful thing. You can get excited about not just a 54-point career-high performance by your team star player. You can make some money on that. Now, I didn't bet live last night. You don't have to bet live. Sometimes you can bet ahead of the game. And the Sixers were minus 2.5 on the spread. And they ended up tying in regulation, winning in overtime, and covering. And it was electric. I wasn't just rooting for my team. I was rooting for my bet too. And that's why FanDuel's so much fun. They have those pregame bets you could put in. Props, parlays, spread, money line. You could do live props and live bets. You could even do futures bets if you want to call your shot way in advance. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push like the Sixers did last night. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Phillies had an amazing charity event last night. I'm going to tell you about it in a second. But if you want more great content like what we've given you so far today on Locked on Phillies, you should be part of our Everydayers Club. People are joining in left and right, subscribing to the YouTube, which helps you get notifications when every episode is posted, right? It's super easy to subscribe to the YouTube. It takes like a second to hit the subscribe button on your YouTube app, whether it's your laptop or your phone. It'll just give you notifications when new episodes are posted, and the show will be in your algorithm. But again, free and easy. It does nothing to hurt you, everything to help you, and it really helps us out as well. So I appreciate every single one of you who's already subscribed. And if you can't watch the show, you can also just listen. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could rate and review if you're listening in podcast form, I'd appreciate that very much as well. People helping people. But that's nowhere near the level of the people helping people with the Philadelphia Phillies. Not that I don't appreciate you doing it, but the Phillies had an awesome event that they did for the first time last night at Citizens Bank Park. So it was called their Sleep Out event. And if you hadn't seen this, you had the opportunity to donate money to sleep out at Citizens Bank Park. So last night, it was cold out, man. Cold and windy. So folks were bundled up. You had the opportunity to pay for a spot to sleep on the field at Citizens Bank Park. You might be like, Connor, why are they doing this in the middle of November? It's cold. Like, what is the point of all of this? Well, the idea is to promote awareness and raise money for homeless individuals in the Philadelphia area. And they did an incredible job. They raised over $1 million for the cause, which just in and of itself is a win. And there are two ways to go about this. You might think, wow, that's a great event. I wish I had done it. Or maybe you did. If you did do this, I'd love to get a comment from somebody who did and just tell me what the experience was like. But it might be wow, I would love to do that. I would love to help. And it might inspire you to do something when the Phillies do this again, because I imagine this will not be the final time they have this event if they raise over $1 million for their cause. But if you don't want to do it and you're like, I would never sleep outside in the cold, which is kind of where I'm at. That in and of itself is raising awareness for the cause that they were trying to, which is just like, this is what people go through day in and day out. And it's a sobering thought to think about someone out on the street right now in this weather we've got in the Northeast, getting colder every day, windy. It's tough. So it's a great event that the Phillies did to take care of a lot of stuff, from awareness to fundraising. And it brings up something that I think we take for granted sometimes with the Phillies, and it's hard not to. At base level, a sports organization is supposed to do one thing: build a winning team. Go out and, like, the Philadelphia Phillies exist to win baseball games. That is it, right? That is their main core focus. But with that comes all of these opportunities to benefit the community around you. And you could say what you want about the Phillies' postseason ability, whether or not the players they have are good enough. They haven't won a World Series since 2008. Like, we'll argue about the quality of the baseball team all day. But the quality of the organization is incredible. It feels like day in and day out, even in the offseason, the Phillies are doing incredible things to help this community. John Middleton, who's the primary owner of the team, is very accessible to fans, which you see pretty much nowhere else in baseball. He listens. He is a fan himself. He takes care of the community around him. They have great game day staff at Citizens Bank Park. The events they run are top notch. When they honor former players or special guests to the ballpark, they do an incredible job, from like throwing out the first pitch to recognizing people before the first pitch to having special nights at the ballpark. I need y'all to understand, like, organizations don't just do this everywhere perfectly. People screw stuff up all the time. The Pittsburgh Pirates just had an issue where they were like covering up the Roberto Clemente acknowledgement patch on the outfield wall. Like, there's some stuff that seems like a no-brainer that other organizations get wrong. And the Phillies, they might not bat 1,000 at the actual plate, but this organization bats 1,000 when it comes to taking care of the community around them. And that should make you feel good as a Phillies fan. Because at the end of the day, win or lose, at least we can sit here and say, we root for a good organization that does good for people, that makes this city and the surrounding area a better place to live. We are better for having the Philadelphia Phillies as part of our community. And that's not something every sports organization can say. And that's something we get very lucky to be able to say about our baseball team. So I know it's not X's and O's related, free agency related, what's going to happen with Kyle Schwarber related, but this is an important part of the equation if you care about your fellow people around you and if you care about an organization actually doing good. This isn't one of those big faceless corporations that makes whatever product that says they're donating this or donating that. Like, this is a local team that is taking care of everyone around them in very special ways. And last night was a great example of that. So kudos to everybody who slept out. Kudos to folks who donated. Kudos to the Phillies for coming up with that wonderful event. I hope and imagine they will continue that in the future, and just keep doing everything you've been doing to be one of the premier organizations, not just in baseball, but in sports when it comes to just helping people, which is something I think everybody needs to think more about in this day and age. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. It's what's helped us become the #1 sports podcast network here on Locked On. You enjoy your weekend. Oh, by the way, just real quick, I almost forgot. The Eagles play the Cowboys this weekend. Screw Dallas. Dallas sucks. Go Birds. I'll talk to you Monday on our next episode of Locked On Phillies.